Sweetheart, where's your mom? Rachel whispered, kneeling before the shivering girl on the curb. She said to wait, but the dark came first, the child replied, her voice trembling like the wind. That was the moment everything shifted. A 4-year-old girl clung tightly to an old scarf, refusing to let go of a stranger who had offered nothing more than kindness and half a sandwich. When her father, a billionaire who had lost everything, arrived to bring her home, the girl looked up and asked, "Do I have to leave her?" The room fell silent. No one could have predicted that one small act of compassion would unravel grief, ignite healing, and bond 3 lives forever. All because of a simple sandwich. The wind howled down the narrow alley beside the diner as Rachel Monroe stepped out, her apron still dusted with flour and coffee stains. The sky had long since turned charcoal, and the street lamps flickered like tired sentinels. It had been another endless double shift, orders piling up, tips barely covering rent, and her feet aching with each step. She wrapped her thin jacket tighter around herself, longing only for sleep and silence. But then she saw her. A tiny girl sat curled on the curb outside the bus stop, her little arms wrapped around a threadbare scarf, shivering in the wind. Her cheeks were flushed from the cold, and her eyes darted nervously at every passing car. Rachel slowed her steps, unsure whether to intervene. It wasn't unusual to see someone struggling in this part of town, but something about the girl struck her. She looked too alone. Rachel knelt beside her and asked gently, "Sweetheart, where's your mom?" The girl flinched, then looked up, wide-eyed. "She said to wait," she whispered, "but the dark came first." Her voice trembled like the wind itself. Rachel's heart twisted in her chest. "What's your name?" she asked softly. "Lily," the girl replied, clutching the scarf tighter. Rachel hesitated for only a moment. She didn't have much. A cramped apartment, a nearly empty fridge, and barely enough left from her paycheck for her own meals. But she couldn't walk away. Not from this. Not from a child left out in the dark. She reached into her bag and pulled out the sandwich she had wrapped to eat at home. "Are you hungry?" she asked. Lily's eyes widened at the sight of the food, but she didn't snatch it. She looked up, searching Rachel's face as if trying to gauge if this act of kindness was real. Rachel smiled and split the sandwich in half, handing it to her. They sat together on the curb in silence. Woman and child, strangers just minutes ago, chewing in sync, the only sound between them the occasional rustle of wind. Afterward, Rachel offered to walk her to the police station, but Lily gripped her coat tightly and shook her head. Rachel sighed. "All right, just for tonight," she murmured, taking the child's hand in hers. Her apartment was small, the wallpaper peeling and heater finicky, but it felt like a castle compared to the street. She drew a warm bath, found one of her old t-shirts to serve as pajamas, and tucked Lily under her only extra blanket. They read a book by the soft glow of a bedside lamp. Rachel's voice low and soothing. Lily's eyes heavy with exhaustion. That night, Rachel didn't just give Lily warmth or food. She gave her a story, and she had no idea it was the beginning of something much bigger. Because sometimes miracles don't arrive with lightning. Sometimes they begin with nothing more than a simple sandwich and the decision to care. While Lily slept curled up on the couch, clutching the old scarf like it held her world together, Rachel sat on the edge of her bed, phone pressed to her ear and heart pounding. She had debated whether to wait until morning, but something about the child's silence, the way she flinched at loud noises, made Rachel feel uneasy. She needed help. Real help. 911. "What's your emergency?" Rachel took a breath. "Hi, I found a little girl. She was alone outside the diner. Her name is Lily. She said her mom told her to wait but never came back." The dispatcher's tone shifted instantly. "Can you confirm the child is safe?" "Yes, she's here with me now, sleeping. I gave her food and a place to stay for the night." The questions kept coming. Address, description, details. Rachel answered everything, her eyes never leaving the small figure asleep across the room. When she hung up, she felt a mix of relief and dread. Had she done the right thing? Would they take Lily away? Would she ever see her again? She didn't know why it hurt to think about that, After all, she'd only just met her. But somehow, it already felt like more. The knock came 2 hours later. Two uniformed officers stepped inside, followed by a sharply dressed woman holding a tablet. "Miss Monroe, I'm with CPS. We've been searching for a missing child reported earlier this evening. You said her name is Lily?" Rachel nodded. "She's asleep. Over there." The woman walked over, examined the child without waking her, and looked visibly shaken. She whispered something to one of the officers who quickly stepped out to make a call. "What's going on?" Rachel asked, suddenly tense. The woman turned. "You said her name was Lily. Did she tell you anything else?" "Just that her mom told her to wait and never came back. That's all." The CPS worker hesitated, then lowered her voice. "Ms. Monroe, that little girl is Lily Carrington." Rachel blinked. "Should I know that name?" "She's the daughter of Alexander Carrington." Rachel stared blankly. "The billionaire," the woman added. "He's been missing from the public eye for months. His wife passed away last year, and now it seems he may have lost more than anyone realized." Rachel's breath caught in her throat. She hadn't just taken in a lost child. She had just stepped into a storm. The Morgan estate loomed at the edge of the city like a cold monument to ambition. Glass, steel, and silence. Once a symbol of power, the place had become a mausoleum. The curtains remained drawn. The laughter that once echoed through the marble halls had been replaced with stillness. And at the center of it all sat Eli Morgan, the brilliant tech mogul the world once envied. Now a hollow man grasping at fading memories. He hadn't shaved in days. His designer suit lay forgotten on the floor. For the third time that week, he sat in Lily's untouched bedroom, his back against the white rocking chair. Mr. Hops, the stuffed bunny, cradled in his arms like it could whisper comfort into the void. It had been 3 months, 3 unbearable months since Lily had vanished from the park. One moment, she was chasing pigeons and asking for strawberry ice cream. The next, he had looked away to take a 2-minute business call, and she was gone. The security team had mobilized instantly. Police drones swept the district. Private investigators were deployed. Flyers were posted, and rewards were offered. The world had moved on, but Eli hadn't. How could he? Every night he repeated the ritual: enter her room, touch the pillow that still held her scent, and whisper the same apology. Daddy should have never looked away. His phone buzzed on the nightstand. Another alert. Possible child sighting, Maple and 6th. Unconfirmed. He almost didn't look. Most leads had been dead ends. Tips from desperate strangers, cruel hoaxes. But this one had a timestamp close to when she would have been asleep. He clicked. The screen showed a street corner dimly lit by a flickering lamp. A woman knelt beside a little girl wrapped in a scarf far too large for her. The child turned her head, briefly, clearly, and the image froze. Wild brown curls, wide green eyes. A familiar sadness in her gaze. It was Lily. The coffee mug in Eli's hand shattered on the floor, ceramic shards scattering like broken time. His breath hitched, vision swimming. "It's her!" He rushed to the intercom. "Start the car," he barked to his driver. "We're going downtown, now." He didn't pack a bag, didn't grab his coat. He moved on instinct, grief turning into hope, desperation into fuel. He didn't know who the woman was kneeling beside his daughter, only that her face held something Eli hadn't seen in months: gentleness. She had wrapped Lily in warmth, offered food, safety, and now nothing else mattered. The man who once moved millions with a press of a button was now just a father chasing a flicker of light in the dark, and he wouldn't stop until he had her in his arms again. The fluorescent lights of the downtown precinct flickered faintly above Rachel's head as she sat stiffly in a plastic chair, her arms wrapped protectively around Lily, who clung to her like ivy on stone. The little girl's fingers curled tightly into the fabric of Rachel's sweater, refusing to loosen even as officers and social workers moved in and out of the room. Rachel had done everything right, or so she thought. She had fed the girl, kept her warm, called the authorities. But now, seated between suspicion and silence, she wasn't so sure anymore. 2 officers stood by the door, whispering. A third paced near the front desk, glancing toward her with practiced neutrality. The social worker who had first arrived remained close, typing quietly on her tablet. Lily, meanwhile, hadn't said a word since they entered the building. Then the door opened. The air changed. A tall man stepped through, sharp features muted by exhaustion, storm gray eyes scanning the room like a hawk circling for its missing piece. His dark coat was still dusted with cold, but his hands trembled at his sides. He saw Lily and froze. "Lily," he breathed. The little girl turned slowly. Recognition bloomed in her expression, and her eyes widened. "Daddy?" His breath hitched. "Hi, baby." But she didn't run into his arms. Instead, she turned back toward Rachel, burying her face in her chest. One of the officers stepped forward. "Mr. Morgan, we were preparing transfer. It seems she's formed an attachment." Eli's gaze finally landed on Rachel, tracing the curve of her arm around his daughter, the gentleness in her posture, the worn scarf now wrapped around Lily's small shoulders. "I wasn't trying to keep her," Rachel said softly. "She was alone. She didn't know her last name. She just said her mommy was gone and told her to wait." Eli stepped forward, kneeling slowly so he was eye level with the two of them. He didn't reach for Lily. He didn't force her to move. Instead, he looked at her, really looked. And then his eyes met Rachel's. His voice cracked. "You saved my daughter." Rachel's eyes widened. She wasn't prepared for gratitude, certainly not from the man the tabloids called untouchable. Lily shifted, looking between them. Her little voice trembled. "Do I have to leave her?" Silence. The entire room seemed to pause. Rachel gently stroked the child's curls. "Your daddy's here now, sweetheart. He loves you so much." Lily didn't answer. She just slowly reached one arm out toward Eli while keeping the other hand tightly clenched around Rachel's scarf. Eli leaned in and gathered his daughter into his arms, holding her as if afraid she might vanish again. Even as she drifted to sleep in his embrace, her tiny fingers never let go of the scarf. Rachel sat in the quiet that followed, staring at the door as it closed behind them. She didn't know it yet, but this wasn't the end. It was only the beginning. The week that followed passed in a haze. Rachel returned to the diner, trying to slip back into the rhythm of coffee refills and wiping down counters. But something had shifted. Every time she passed the corner booth, she thought of Lily, her tiny hands clinging to that scarf, her wide green eyes whispering, "Do I have to leave her?" It was a quiet Tuesday morning when the bell above the diner door chimed. Rachel looked up instinctively but saw no one familiar. Only a tall figure in a dark coat sitting in the corner booth, facing the window, coffee untouched. She continued working, casting glances now and then. The man didn't speak, didn't eat, barely moved. After nearly an hour, he stood up and left without a word. Curious, Rachel walked over and found a neatly folded napkin under the mug. Tucked beside it was a thick business card, engraved minimalist. Eli Morgan, direct line. On the napkin, scrawled in clean penmanship, were the words, "Would you consider tutoring Lily? She trusts you." Rachel stood there, motionless, the note trembling in her fingers. It wasn't just an offer, it was a bridge, unexpected, fragile, and full of questions. She didn't have teaching credentials, her life was far from stable, but somehow Lily had trusted her, clung to her in the cold like she was the only safe place left in the world. That night, Rachel sat on the edge of her bed, staring at the business card for what felt like hours. Then with a deep breath, she reached for her phone. She called, and by morning she stood at the gates of the Morgan estate, uncertain, nervous, but ready to say yes to something that felt like the start of everything. The Morgan estate, once a place of silence and shadows, slowly began to change. Rachel arrived each morning by 9. At first, she felt like a guest trespassing in a museum, gleaming floors, tall ceilings, and furniture that looked more decorative than lived in. But Lily's voice cut through the stillness like sunlight. The little girl would rush down the stairs, curls bouncing, arms flung open in greeting. "Mama Rachel," she'd sometimes say, then blush and correct herself. "I mean, Miss Rachel." Rachel never corrected her. Their days fell into a quiet rhythm. Mornings began with reading, Rachel guiding Lily's finger along each line, her voice soft and patient. They practiced letters, built puzzles, drew rainbows and unicorns on wide sheets of butcher paper spread across the floor. Laughter became a daily sound. It echoed down the marble halls like a melody long forgotten. Eli watched from the edges at first, always quiet, always distant, but Rachel noticed him lingering near doorways during story time, or pausing on the stairs as Lily proudly displayed a new drawing. One day, after Lily finished her alphabet without a single mistake, Rachel slipped a folded napkin into her lunchbox. "You're brilliant. Be proud of yourself." Love R. The next morning, she found that napkin tucked neatly into Lily's room mirror, flattened, cherished. Soon, napkin notes became a ritual. Words of encouragement tucked into sandwich bags. Simple affirmations like, "You're brave," or "Your giggle is magic." One evening, Eli came home later than usual. Rachel had left a plate for him in the oven, still warm. Next to it was a folded napkin shaped like a fox, with a message scrawled in her familiar handwriting. "Lily aced her numbers today. You'd have been proud." The next day, Rachel found a return note in the kitchen. "Thanks for helping her find joy again." Gradually, dinners became shared meals. At first, Rachel declined politely, unsure of boundaries, but Eli gently asked her to stay. Eventually, it became normal. 3 chairs filled around the table, Lily in the middle, stories and laughter replacing the clinking of silverware. Rachel began cooking more often. Not gourmet, just comfort food. Grilled cheese, baked pasta, warm casseroles passed down from her grandmother. It made the towering kitchen feel less sterile, more human. The mansion warmed, not from the heater, but from presence, from connection. One rainy afternoon, Rachel found herself curled up on the oversized couch beside Lily, a storybook in one hand and hot cocoa in the other. Eli sat across from them, laptop forgotten, his eyes fixed not on the screen, but on them. Rachel looked up. Their eyes met. He didn't look away this time. He simply smiled. And in that quiet, shared moment, amidst crayon drawings and cocoa-stained napkins, Rachel realized something astonishing. This didn't feel borrowed anymore. It felt like belonging. It felt like the beginning of a home. The quiet rhythm of the Morgan estate was disrupted one Saturday morning by the sound of heels on stone. Rachel had just finished folding Lily's laundry and was heading toward the staircase when the front doorbell rang. The housekeeper glanced up, startled. Few people ever came unannounced. Rachel opened the door. A woman stood on the steps, elegant and imposing. Her features were striking, her posture rigid, and her eyes the same piercing green as Lily's, but colder, sharpened by grief and suspicion. "You must be Rachel Monroe," the woman said without offering a hand. Rachel nodded. "I am. I'm Vanessa Kingsley, Clara's sister." Her voice held no warmth. "Lily's aunt." Rachel's breath caught for a moment. Clara, Eli's late wife, Lily's mother. "I've read about you," Vanessa continued, stepping inside uninvited. "Seen the photos. You've certainly made yourself comfortable here." "I'm just here for Lily," Rachel replied gently. Vanessa's gaze swept the foyer, pausing at a set of colored drawings taped to the wall. "You think because you read bedtime stories and baked casseroles that you've earned a place in this family?" "I'm not trying to earn anything," Rachel said, standing firm. "I'm here because Lily needed someone. That's all." Vanessa scoffed. "You're playing house, pretending to be something you're not." Rachel didn't flinch. "I'm not replacing anyone," she said softly, "least of all Lily's mother. I'm just giving Lily a little warmth back, something she lost the day Clara died." For a moment, Vanessa's expression wavered, just a flicker of something behind her guarded stare. But before she could respond, the sound of soft footsteps echoed down the hall. Lily appeared in the doorway, pajama-clad and sleepy-eyed. She blinked at the unfamiliar figure, then turned to Rachel with a sleepy smile. "Mama Rachel," she whispered, "can we go to my room now?" The air shifted. Vanessa's mouth parted slightly, but no words came. Her eyes flicked between the child, still clutching Rachel's hand, and the woman she had come prepared to challenge. "Mama Rachel." 2 simple words, not forced, not prompted, just chosen. Rachel looked down at Lily, gave her hand a reassuring squeeze, and nodded. "Of course, sweetheart." As they walked away, Rachel glanced back over her shoulder. Vanessa hadn't moved. She stood at the doorway, frozen in silence. She didn't slam the door, didn't lash out. For the first time, her glare was gone, replaced by something less certain. It wasn't approval, not yet, but it also wasn't fury, just a woman quietly watching the child her sister left behind, nestled safely beside someone she clearly loved, and maybe beginning to understand. 1 year later, under the gentle sway of a willow tree by the lake, Rachel Monroe stood in a soft ivory dress, sunlight spilling through the branches above her like blessings. The air was warm, laced with the scent of marigolds from the garden she and Lily had planted months before. No orchestra, no extravagance, just string lights, folding chairs, and the people who mattered most. Lily stood proudly at the end of the aisle, her curls crowned with daisies, clutching a small velvet ring box with both hands. Her grin was too wide for her tiny face, but no one had the heart to tell her to contain it. This was her day too. Eli Morgan waited beneath the willow, dressed in a simple linen shirt and slacks, his usual composure softened by something deeper. Peace. He had spent years building empires, but this moment felt like the only foundation that truly mattered. When Rachel stepped forward, their eyes met, and everything else faded. No speeches, no show, just truth. Eli took her hands, his thumb brushing the inside of her wrist where her pulse beat steady and sure. "I promise to choose you every day," he whispered, "the way you chose Lily when I couldn't." "Oh, Rachel's voice trembled. "I promise to love you with the quiet devotion I gave when you were too broken to ask for it." There were no grand declarations, just two hearts meeting in a place where pain had once lived, now blooming into something tender, rooted, and strong. When it came time for the rings, Lily stepped forward with all the importance of royalty. She opened the box with care, beaming as her parents exchanged simple gold bands, engraved with one word inside: home. The guests applauded, but gently, like they didn't want to disturb the sacredness of the moment. Rachel looked down at Lily, who was now standing between them, her hands tucked into theirs. And for the first time in her life, Rachel didn't feel like she was standing in someone else's story. She was home, and this time, she belonged. Life after the vows didn't become a fairy tale. It became something better, real, warm, and deeply rooted in purpose. Rachel now spent her mornings at the local community center, where she taught reading and writing to children who reminded her of Lily, bright-eyed, curious, and sometimes carrying the quiet weight of unspoken hardship. She didn't have a fancy degree, but what she offered couldn't be taught in school: patience, compassion, and lived experience. The community center had grown too. Eli, never one to do things halfway, had funded an entire new wing, built not in his name, but in honor of the woman who had shaped their daughter's early years. The Clara Morgan Room for Hope. It wasn't just a gesture, it was a bridge between past and future. Clara's name lived on in a place where light poured through windows and stories were shared instead of silenced. Back home, their lakeside house had become a sanctuary, not large or extravagant, but warm, personal. Its wraparound porch was lined with flower boxes Lily helped plant every spring. Inside, the walls were covered in finger paintings, school projects, and sticky note affirmations. A piano sat near the window, not because anyone played particularly well, but because Lily liked pressing the keys while singing made-up songs at the top of her lungs. Laughter filled every room now. Eli, once known for towering silence and intensity, now wore a softness few outside their family had ever seen. He still worked, but he also helped Rachel pack lunches, braided Lily's hair with clumsy but loving hands, and insisted on Sunday pancakes, even if half of them ended up burned. Lily thrived. She slept soundly. She ran barefoot through the yard. She wrote stories about dragons and brave girls with scarves who saved the day. And sometimes she would curl up beside Rachel and whisper, "Tell me the story again, how we found each other." Rachel would smile, brush a curl behind Lily's ear, and begin. It all started with a sandwich, because it was true. One small act of compassion unraveled grief, sparked healing, and stitched together the kind of family that fate alone couldn't create. And through it all, they held fast to the reminder. Sometimes the greatest beginnings come disguised as ordinary moments, all because of a simple sandwich. And so, a story that began with exhaustion and a half-eaten sandwich grew into something no one could have predicted: healing, love, and a home built not on wealth, but on kindness. In today's world, where we often rush past strangers and guard our hearts with suspicion, Rachel's choice reminds us of something powerful. One quiet act of compassion can ripple far beyond the moment it's given. In a culture that celebrates success and speed, maybe what we need most is to slow down and simply notice one another. A child alone on a curb, a tired heart behind the counter, a father grieving in silence. It makes you wonder, how many lives pass by us every day, waiting for someone to reach out? This story also teaches us that family isn't always about blood. Sometimes it's the people who show up when they have nothing to gain, people who choose to stay. And perhaps most beautifully, it shows that healing doesn't come all at once. It comes in small moments, a scarf shared, a bedtime story, a napkin note. So we ask you, have you ever had a moment where a stranger's kindness changed everything for you? Or where you made a difference just by caring? Let us know in the comments. We'd love to hear your stories, your thoughts, even your questions. Do you think Lily would have recovered the same way without Rachel? Should Rachel have stepped back, or was it destiny? If this story touched your heart, please consider subscribing to our channel, liking the video, and sharing it with someone who needs a little light today. Because here on Warm Soul Stories, we believe in the power of simple love, second chances, and sandwiches that change everything. Thank you for being here.